Post-colonial studies has been gaining prominence since the 1970s. Some would date its rise in the Western Academy from the publication of Edward Said's influential critique of Western construction of Orient in his 1978 book Orientalism, which is a text examining the relationship between those in the West and the other in the East. The people in the East are others. So this work has become a staple in post-colonial courses, and it helped to expand the field over the last few decades. Said was a Palestinian-American scholar who taught at Columbia University for the majority of his academic career. Said exposed the Eurocentric universalism, which is the practice of placing emphasis on European or generally Western concerns, Western culture, Western values at the expense of those of other cultures that glorify the superiority of what is European and what is Western. And they denigrate what is not European. What is not Western has been denigrated by the European scholars. Said identified a European cultural tradition of Orientalism that identifies the East as other, inferior to the West. Other important early thinkers in post-colonial theory, just to name a couple of writers, include Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak and Homi K. Bhabha. While the field of post-colonial studies only began taking shape in the 1970s and early 1980s, numerous fiction writers began publishing works in the decades immediately following the Second World War. One of the most important and most significant post-colonial novels to emerge in the period was Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, which was published in 1958. This novel now graces many Anglophone fiction courses in syllabi, which isn't a surprise given its enormous popularity and importance when it was first published. It became very famous immediately after its publication. Achebe wrote the book at the end of the British colonial period in Nigeria, but depicted an earlier moment in Nigerian history. He doesn't write about post-independence Nigeria. He writes about the country when it was in the possession of the European powers. He tells in the story about Igbo village in the 19th century. And there we witness a tragic demise of his culture at the hands of the colonialism. Nigeria remained a British colony until 1960s. The term post-colonial literature would seem to be to label literature written by people living in countries formerly colonized by other countries. This is undoubtedly what the term originally meant. But there are many problems with this definition. Literally, post-colonialism refers to the period following the decline of colonialism or the end of the, or you may say, diminishing or lessening of domination by European powers. When the European empire diminished, when it lessened or it gradually started disappearing, this post-colonial literature came into existence. This growing currency within the academy of the term post-colonial, sometimes hyphenated, sometimes not hyphenated, was consolidated by the appearance in 1989 of the Empire Writes Back, Theory and Practice in Post-Colonial Literature by Bill Ashcraft, Garrett Griffith and Helen Tiffin. These three writers published this book. Since then, the use of cognate term Commonwealth and Third World that were used to describe the literature of Europe's former colonies has become rarer. Now, post-colonial, the term post-colonial literature has become popular. First, literal colonization is not the exclusive object of post-colonial study. In the 60s, some thinkers developed the concept of neo-imperialism to label relationship like that between the US and many Latin American countries, which, while normally independent, had economies dominated by American business interests, often backed up by American military forces. Yeah. Second thing, among the works commonly studied under this label are novels like Claude McKay's Banjo and Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, which were written while the nations in question like Jamaica and Nigeria were still colonies. Some scholars attempt to solve this problem by arguing that the term should denote works written after colonization. Post-colonial, some writers say that it should denote the works written after the colonization, not only those created after independence, but those, but that would be post-colonization literature. Few people understand the term in this sense outside a small circle of scholars working in the field of post-colonial literature.